So we are coming back to order, and it's a real pleasure for me to introduce our keynote for tonight. Caleen Sisk-Franco is the chief and spiritual leader of the Winnemem-Wintu tribe. She's the great niece and successor of Florence Jones. Well, I don't think I need to say too much more. Instead, I'm just going to bring Caleen up.
I'm not opposed to standing on this because it reminds me of our foot drum. I just had my stick, huh? Well, I'm glad that you all came out tonight, and I hope that some of the words and the information that you've received so far is going to help guide your work and the things that you're going to become in your life as you grow up. And we're all still growing up. You know, my Grams was 86, and she said, you know, I still just don't know everything. I'm still learning it. And so that gives us a lot of latitude, you know, to keep learning, to keep trying to figure things out and keep doing the best that we can. And the teachings of the Winnemem is always to produce a good person. Maybe not the smartest 4.0 college graduate, Harvard material, but a good person. A good person that takes care of themselves, a good person that takes care of each other, takes care of our land, sings to the water, goes and takes care of those things that the Creator gave us to do, to be here. We have jobs to do. And somehow, you know, the populations that came in and made life easy, I guess it's called, Easy Street. And on Easy Street, we've learned that we don't have to mind our dump. We don't have to care about what's going on in that house next door. We don't have to worry about our relatives, the babies that are being born, the elders that are coming of age. We don't have to listen to anybody else. You know, we've gotten away from listening to the wind, listening to the water and the ripples. We've gotten away from sitting at those sacred waterfalls and gathering the information so that we can be better people. We can choose to do good things and change what we're doing. So the Winnemem, we came through all of that Holocaust that a lot of tribes across the nation and now in other countries are experiencing the same thing that we went through. You know, the untouched tribes of Brazil and the Amazon, that for the first time they're seeing the modern world. And the modern world is so worried about them. Let's get them some medical attention. It's like, how long have they been there? Without your medical attention? It's like the medical attention that was brought to us was devastating. Infant mortality raised 3 times because of medical attention that was brought to us. You know, I think we're more toothless now that we have dentists. Because it's cheaper to pull our teeth than to fix them. And it's always based on the dollar, it seems, in this world. It's always based on an economic gain. And it doesn't matter who suffers the consequences, whether it be elders or babies or the sickly, newborns, or the teenagers. It doesn't matter. What matters, it seems, is that we uphold this capitalistic approach to living on this earth in United States. Now, I have great hope for Evo Morales, who says the #1 thing on his list is to do away with capitalism. I'm behind him 100%. In my travels, I just went to Mexico, to Huipan, a little village that's about 3 hours outside of Mexico City. And there, I see the same kind of thing that had happened to us only earlier. That this small little village was inundated by the Catholic Church, that only Spanish was taught in the school. They were not allowed to have their own native language taught in the school. You know, all of those things reminded me of the boarding schools that we went through, that we were punished for speaking our language or caring for the ways of our traditions, the songs, the ceremonies, the ways that we took care of ourselves when we're in mourning. When we feel sad, what do? And in those conditions, you learn to survive. And I think a lot of Indian people in the United States have learned how to survive, but they didn't really save enough of their culture. They didn't hang on to the tribalness that makes us tribes. And instead, we've been taught by the federal government that, you know, in order to keep track of our tribes, that we have to, you know, have a bloodline. And that bloodline makes a tribe. It makes Indians. You know, if you're half blood or full blood or quarter blood or eighth blood, you know, everybody gets a little bit more uneasy when it gets down to like 1 in 500th blood. And it starts dwindling away the responsibilities of that particular bloodline. And in taking on the responsibilities of a tribal nation, a tribal way, what you're saying is, I don't really care how much blood I have. If I know I sing those songs and I go to those sacred places and I do these dances, I am that tribe. All of these people make a tribe then who do the same thing, who take care of those sacred places, who sing and say prayers to all of the sacred places in their area. Because federal recognition, in my mind, is an assimilation practice that's ready to crash. I met a Ponca grandmother who wanted to talk to us because, you know, we're one of those unrecognized Part 83 tribes. And she said, you know, that she is a recognized tribe, but she and the other grandmothers of the Ponca people are contemplating pulling away from the tribe because of what they're doing. They're not listening to the grandmothers anymore. They're not listening to the traditionals anymore. And the other fact of it is that her grandchildren, who are also Ponca and other Indian mixed blood, were not enough Ponca to enroll with her people. So the bottom end of the Ponca people were falling away. If you're not going to teach your young people how to be your tribe, who will be your tribe? Because if we don't celebrate our ways of our tribes, there's nobody else who will. There's only one place in the world that Winnemem can learn how to be Winnemem, and there's no place else in the world that that can happen. So if we don't hang on to that right and fight for the rights of our future generations to be Winnemem, then there won't be any more. The same with any other tribe. And one of the things that, you know, people have asked is like, well, you want to be federally recognized, right? It's like, I'm not sure. I've never been federally recognized, but I do see a lot of federally recognized tribes, and I don't see a whole lot of advantages to being federally recognized, other than the fact that the laws that protect our rights are available. Like right now, we are to hold a puberty ceremony, a Batlas Chonas, for our young girl, and we cannot utilize the Farm Bill that says that an Indian tribe has the right to have a temporary closure of an area for ceremony. But since we're not Indians, we can't have that area closed for a private ceremony. And in that sense, I think that maybe federal recognition works a little bit, but I also see that there are so many federally recognized tribes that I have visited that I am so appalled all the time. Every time I see it, it's like, well, you'll have to take that to our culture committee. If you want. We're talking about salmon. We're talking about a return of the salmon project. Well, you have to talk to our culture committee because there's the ones that handle that. And I'm thinking, you know, if we ever became federally recognized, I think that we would have a economic development committee because we are the culture. We are the ones who decide about, you know, the activities of the tribe and the culture and the value that that has in making us the people that we are supposed to be. That how can we be good people if we buy into the economic process that sets casinos or hotels or whatever the development is on burial grounds or on sacred lands or on sacred sites? Then we're missing something, that we are lost to a function that we should have had in our world to be good people. And so it's a difficult situation. It's like my gram says, you never want to be invited to a party on their terms. If you're going to go, then you'll go. So, and the government doesn't say that, you know, once you make application to become a tribe, like we're going to join the 500 acre club, and we're coming in with a certain amount of knowledge about who we are, and then they're going to give us something. And then I guess we get a handbook on how to be Winnemem because they have all of the instructions of all of the tribes, and maybe there'll be a songbook that will, you know, help our younger generations out to build the schools so that we'll know how to do these things. And so that, you know, it must be like that. I'm not sure. But every recognized tribe I know of is that their spirituality is always second. Their traditions hardly have a position in their decisions anymore. The design of their governments is designed after the United States, and they're elected each year, or every 4 years, I'm not even sure. But you know, my Grams was elected by Creator, by the spiritual world, to take her place as a leader amongst our people for 68 years. And in that 68 years, we were not allowed to assemble and say, I think we should recall her. I'm just not sure that she's doing the right thing. Or that she could just say, you know what, I'm done. I'm not doing the leadership anymore, I'm not running. There's a different way of thinking about when you are in it for the long run. When you hold those things sacred, the teachings that come from the mountains and the waters, that's a different way of leading. And now, you know, since 2012, I went through a transition time with her, and I always kind of thought in my mind that she's going to always be here, all the time, be here. And even though I was going through these steps, it still didn't dawn on me until one of the times at ceremony, we were out in the circle and she was praying to the Mount Shasta, and she turned around and she had this headdress on. And she turned around and she took it off and she put it in my hands. And I didn't, you know, it's like, oh no, you need to take that back. And afterwards, she did take it back, but she said, you know, one day you're going to be wearing this. One day, this is already building up. They've already accepted you. This is the way it's going to be. And you have to decide whether or not you're going to go along with it. But there are a lot of things that happen, you know, in our lives that get us ready from the time that we're born to the time that we actually are mandated with taking over something like that. And so it's kind of like the job now is that this is not going to die on my watch. There will be one of them in the future. But I wanted to talk to you about salmon and about water. And two of the things that the Winnemem holds so revere and dear to our hearts, in that, Winnemem in our language means middle river, middle water. Where the middle water people, Wintu is people. Winnemem, Wintu, we're the middle river people. And so we believe that we came out, this is what our history tells us, is that we came out of Mount Shasta through a spring that bubbles up. Both water and air come out of that spring. And it comes down the mountain to create the McCloud River watershed area. And in that development, we were one of the animals, one of the people put there. And when we came out of that mountain spring, Creator came in and said, this is before it was all populated around, to say that he needed people to look out for the land, that he's created different things out there, and that there needs to be caretakers that go out and watch over this place that has been created. And so inside the mountain, all these little spirit beings decided what they were going to be. Waterbug, he went out. Eagle went out. Elk throwed his head back with his full set of horns and went out. And he still runs that way today. Deer went out. Bear went out. Coyote. All of them, as they went out, they named what they're going to be. And they automatically knew their job, what their job would be in balancing in nature, balancing the life that was going to be there, from the giving trees to the snakes, to the spiders, to the plant life, to the medicines that came. And each one left. But finally there was this last little spirit being marching around inside thinking, oh, what should I be? No, somebody's already got that. Let's see, what could I be? I could be bear. No, I think there's 3 different kinds of bears already, so I'm not going to be a bear. And so finally, he goes out the door and he says, I'm going to be human. And he runs down the stream. And the Creator looks at that and says, you know what, that one right there, that's going to need some help. And so he called back some of the spirit beings, the mountain spirit, the fire spirit, water, came back and vowed to help that little being understand their jobs and that they might get lost sometimes. And then salmon spirit came back and said, that one has a major problem in communicating. They don't really know how to communicate. So I'm going to give them my voice so that they will be able to communicate with their world around them. They'll be able to sing, and they'll be able to take care of things in a way that they can explain it and they can be taught. And in return for that, salmon gave the responsibility to human to always speak for them, because now they would no longer be able to talk. And so since that time, the Winnemem have honored the gift of voice by always speaking up for salmon. And in the and we found out that it's not a really easy job to do, that a lot of people only think of salmon as a fish and as a commodity and as something to make money from. And they don't have the insight that we do, that salmon is that indicator of how healthy our waterways are. If the salmon can't live there, then nobody else can either. If the salmon cannot make it, then people can't make it either. And it's just a matter of time. So the salmon for us is like the miner's canary. As soon as there's problems with the canary and the mind, that the miners know that the air is no good anymore and that they should get out. And the salmon are that same indicator of how healthy our streams and rivers are. And right now, the miners should get out. If we looked at some of them, some of the rivers are already contaminated beyond the point that these fish can survive. There are a few rivers left, and there are some that can be saved to help the salmon live in them. So we want to assist in that. You know, in the 1800s, the U.S. fish hatchery found out that there were a lot of salmon in our river, the McCloud River. And so they built the first U.S. fish hatchery on the West Coast on our river. And when they did that, we were not very happy campers. And our people did a war dance against them. But you have to realize that we were also hunted during that same time, and that our numbers had dropped from 14,000 of us on the Winnemem to 395 by 1910. So there weren't a whole lot of us left, but the ones who were still there were still feisty enough and believed enough that they held a war dance, even though they knew that they could be shot on sight for even doing that and posing some opposition. But it was important enough for them to do, to oppose the taking of the salmon in that way. But, you know, governments get their way, and we got our way in a sense too, because when we saw what was happening and the ones who were left, the Indian doctors that were there, the Winnemem doctors, the Flaheets, they called together those top doctors to say, we need to do something for salmon. And they held a ceremony at that time to pray and to ask the Creator, what is it that we could do? You know, we're not able to fight this battle on the same level as the miners and the settlers and the army, but we want to do something for salmon, because salmon is the indicator of our life. If there are no more salmon, then we're for sure to be gone. So the Creator came in and told them that they would send the salmon through an ice waterfall on Mount Shasta, and there the salmon would wait until it was time. And at that time, we would know about that. And so as the salmon went through this ice waterfall, some of them stayed, but eventually, because of Shasta Dam, all of the McCloud River salmon were stopped. And even though there are fish scientists now, you know, that's our other experts, say that there are McCloud River salmon in the Sacramento River, we don't believe that that's so, because salmon are in timing, and the salmon who swim to the top of the mountain are in a time period that they will not spawn early. They will not spawn in the lower waters. They would have killed themselves trying to get to their spawning beds. And so after 7 years, those salmon are gone. Those salmon are gone. The first 7 years of the Shasta Dam, they're gone. The ones who would swim the extra 200 miles above the dam, all of the ones below it are not McCloud River salmon. They're not the high mountain salmon. And so in opposing the Shasta Dam raise, we held a war dance. A prayer came down from the mountain to hold a war dance on the Shasta Dam, because that is the weapon of mass destruction. That's the one that is killing everything in its path. And so we held that war dance on the dam. And the old-time salmon, the Lenata Nur, they came back in with songs for us to sing, to say, we want to come back. We want to come back, the Lenata Nur. And it's like, okay, where are they? And right after that, we got information from New Zealand that they had our salmon. Now remember that we sent them through the ice waterfall years and years and years before, but we didn't know where they went. And so here comes New Zealand people, you know, that the fish hatchery at the time sent salmon all around the world to try to save the shortage of salmon in other places, in other countries. And only in New Zealand they took only in New Zealand they survived in the Rokai River. But, interestingly enough, there's a mountain there that almost looks like Mount Shasta, and it also has ice waterfalls in the valleys high on the mountain where the glaciers are. And so immediately we think that's where they went, and that's why they survived there. And we went to sing and dance for them. That was a prayer that also came down, because it's like, we heard that they're New Zealand, it's like, and where is that? What does that look like? It could have been it could have been anywhere in the world, and we would have gone there to dance and sing for them. So we, at first, we're a very small village, and we don't have a whole lot of funds, and most of our funds goes to PG&E, pay for electricity, when we can. And none of our people really are well traveled, in the sense that, flying somewhere is just not, a yearly vacation kind of thing. Or even every 5 years you don't go flying around. And so we decided that we were going to go after this prayers came down from the mountain, that we knew we had to go. And so now the village has to participate. At first I thought, well, maybe Mark and I and a couple of other people, we could go over there and sing for these fish. And it's like, where is it? How much does it cost to get there? Certainly we can't swim. But as it unfolded, there were 28 of the Winnemem people went to New Zealand to sing and dance and put the ceremony down for the salmon. And on the other side, we didn't know any Maori. We didn't know where the fish were in New Zealand, the North Island, South Island, or what lived on the banks of those rivers. Some of our people were afraid that there were alligators down there. But we found out we were not going to Australia. And that New Zealand basically was a bird island, and that everything that was aside from the birds there was introduced, including our salmon. And the salmon there are the direct opposite of the eel, the tuna, for the Maori. The tuna goes out to the ocean to spawn, and they come back in to grow up in the river. The salmon come in to spawn, and they go out to the ocean to grow up. And so they didn't interfere with each other's lives. They were compatible in a lot of ways. And so when we got a hold of the information about the Maori, the ones who were taking care of our salmon, and made a call to them and started talking to them, it was like they knew who we were or something, because they didn't say, "Are you guys federally recognized? Are you real Indians?" Because but it was like they knew exactly why we had to come, because they feel that same way about the tuna, that they take care of them. They do trap and transfer for the dams that are on their rivers. And so they accommodated us, 28 of us, to come and hold this ceremony. So I wanted to share a portion of that with you. That was a DVD that Moving Images did for us. We'll put together a DVD. It's a short snapshot. And we are trying to get more funds to develop this to a full documentary, so that more people can understand the value that salmon hold, more so than somebody's fishing right, or somebody's commercial boat, or somebody's right to recreate with the salmon. But to teach people that these salmon are more than that. They are the life changers. They are the climate changers, because if we did what is good for salmon, we would stop climate change. So, we can start the video. There it goes. That's a good sign that they did the little dance right here. It's like the time's right. We're here at the right time.
Since the beginning, the Winnemem Wintu people have been singing for the waters at their Genesis Spring in Northern California. Now they embark on a journey to meet lost relatives and make new family. From their sacred Mount Shasta, across the Pacific, to Mount Araki, sacred to New Zealand's Maori people. For thousands of years, the Winnemem people lived along the river now called McCloud. They met hard times after the gold rush madness and California land grab, and the rejection of their treaty. But still, the tribe survived with their river and their Chinook salmon relatives. But in 1945, the 600-foot-high Shasta Dam cut off the river, flooding Winnemem homes and halting the salmon's ancient journey upstream. The tribe believed their salmon relatives were gone forever. Still, they held ceremony for the water, their river, and their sacred places. When they held a war dance on the dam to stop it being raised even higher, the story went around the world. Soon, a message came in. Your relatives are alive and well, here in New Zealand.
We come here with our hearts open, with our tears being shed for those relatives that we lost so many years ago.
And we give you our greetings, that peace and goodwill may prevail amongst us all.
Now, 28 tribal members have journeyed across the Pacific to renew their connections with their salmon relatives and make new family with their Maori hosts.
These are the salmon that my grandparents would have seen in the same fashion, looking up and down, watching them.
In the 1800s, a fish hatchery on the McCloud River sent salmon eggs around the world, and New Zealand is the only place the Winnemem Chinook salmon survive.
My heart is really... I wish Grams were here. My dad and Aunt Maud and everybody.
It's going to be nice to see him in our own water, coming up our own river.
At a hatchery on New Zealand's Rakaya River, the release of salmon fry to begin their journey to the sea is a release of emotions as well.
Letting the fish go. That was hard. Because it was like getting to see somebody for the first time and then having to let them go.
It's wonderful that you're here. It's wonderful that we've connected here.
Yeah.
For your purpose on our whenua is just, something special.
For 4 days, the tribe holds ceremony beside the Ricaya River, dancing, singing, and fasting.
When I was dancing, I could just feel it, like in my body. It felt powerful. And then I put my hand to the mountain, prayed for the salmon. We're here for these salmon. Let them make their way back home. And I prayed to the river, and I prayed to the fire, and give me strength to help me do this. And we continue being like this strong.
You have helped us to complete the beginning foundation of our fish return. And to reintroduce those little fry into our rivers will be the next steps, the next things that we're going to do.
Please support the completion of this important documentary. Join the circle of supporters and donate at dancingsalmonhome.com. Learn more about the Winnemem Wintu tribe at winnememwintu.us.
That's quite a memory coming back for me as well. It's like every time I see that, and I see how our young people feel about that I know it's worth doing, that I know it has to be done for our rivers, for the salmon, for a way of life that was here and survived here long before this modern age. And we feel like the modern age is going to bottom out. It's bottoming out now. And I hear the water justice folks saying, well, we're only concerned about a certain level of pollution we're putting in the water. It's like, as long as it doesn't go over that, it's kind of like, it's okay if I put bleach in my baby's bottle, as long as it doesn't really hurt them. It's okay. And keep doing that, because we already know that the water that you're drinking that comes from treatment centers and the additives that are put in them already are changing the people, or already you can taste them. If you drink mountain water all the time and then you come down to the city and you taste the water, you can taste the difference. You know that is not live water, that the water isn't living anymore because of chlorine or fluoride or a number of other things besides all the waste products that they put in there to try to clean it up after they put it in there. It doesn't make sense to me that it's okay to dump stuff in the water all the time like that. And in our area, they say Shasta Dam, the lake, is the cornerstone for all the California water systems and all that. But you know what? It's okay to dump your houseboat of sewage into the lake, I guess. It's like, and it's okay for Caltrans not to build bridges that run road water off into filtration systems before it goes back into the lake. Why is that, if it's so important? It's so important that, they want to flood us out, even though they know it won't meet even 2% of the water shortage needs in California. Yet they still don't stop polluting the rest of the waters. They don't regulate the groundwaters. They don't make people use the water wisely. They're not even teaching in the schools right now how kids can live with water managing systems in their own homes. But instead, Mother Earth has a certain amount of water to give, and we are destroying and polluting all that has been given. There are aquifers that are dried up. There are many groundwater systems that are totally contaminated from the spillover of people's greediness for watering deserts and the selenium that's getting into the groundwaters of the people who still have water. The mountaintop, are getting removed. All of those water systems in the mountains cannot be put back. When they take that mountain down, it does not hold water anymore. They've cut all the big trees, and they're replanting like that's a real forest now. But those are not the trees that bring the water up from the roots to feed the grasses and the flowers, and it provides the waters for the bugs and the ones who repopulate with the sugar pine nuts and all of the fruits that come from there. They don't realize, I guess, do they? I mean, we have these universities, right? Yeah. We have very smart people coming out. They have PhDs, and they are experts in water and environment and building and all of these kinds of things. But it's been such a short time that educated people have almost completely destroyed a system that was so well balanced by the things that they think are important. And again, like Evo Morales said, I believe that it is economics, it is capitalism that drives the efforts, while most people are not participants of capitalism. Most people never reach that level to even say that they should even support capitalism, because they are never there. However, 5% of the people own the most wealth in the world. And why would that be? Why would we allow that to be? Because now it's affecting one of the most precious resources to every living thing. They came, can you imagine? I always think of my great-grandfather, or my great-great-grandfather was spearing salmon, and he was, elderly at the time. And when California discovered gold, in 1850, 1849, they came in, and it's like, I can only imagine what he thought. It's like, look at those crazy people. They're running around out there gathering up that yellow rock. It's like, we don't use it. What is it good for? But they were willing to kill for it, and they did. And then they came in and mined all the mountains. They cut them open. They ripped them open. They made them bleed to get that gold. And they took other minerals as well, iron and copper and other metals out of the mountains. And then they decided, well, I think these trees are pretty important too, these great big giants. These trees are like 20 feet, 26 feet around. And I think we should just cut some of those down, and lumber industry went out of control. And they cut almost all of the giants in the forests, in the high mountains. Almost all of the redwoods fell. And you see big pictures of them, of these giants that brought water up from deep in the earth. They brought it up, and they kept the water levels balanced for us. And all of the relatives had water and homes because of them. Indian people that even made houses like this, took planks off of living trees. They didn't just go out and cut it all down. There were ways of being in nature that, just like a bird builds a nest, so did the Indians build a little home. A modest little home that could take care of us, that would shelter us, and that we could raise our young. But from that thinking, we've gotten off to, humongous homes that two people live in. It's like my whole village could live in some of those homes. But we need to think about where do we go from here, because global warming is happening. The ice is melting. The ice in Greenland is melting. There is a lake in the Arctic that if it overflows, it might even stop the Gulf Stream from flowing. And when that happens, there will be a lot of people who are without water. It'll go against the Gulf Stream. Different things around the world are happening. And so, you know, like my grandma said, you know, we have to convince other people not to follow what has been set there, because it's not okay to dump anything in the water. You know, when we have our sacred swims and stuff, even we do our prayer and we sing to our spring, we don't even put tobacco in that water because it's so sacred. It is such a blessing to be there. We put nothing in there because it is the one who blesses us. There's nothing that we could do to it to bless it. It is from the Creator. It is the blesser. So we have to rethink, you know, what our world looks like and why is it okay to keep contaminating rivers around the world, keep allowing corporate bottling companies to destroy water and then sell it back to us. Why is that okay? Because you know what? One of the things is that no matter where you buy a bottle of Nestle's water, it always tastes the same. And why does it taste the same? Because you expect it to taste the same, no matter if they get it out of the springs on Mount Shasta or the Polar Springs somewhere else, or you know, somewhere where it's very sensitive areas. But it always tastes the same because they make it taste the same. So why do they go and do that? Because you'll buy it. And why do you buy it? Because you're trained to think that it's healthy for you. It's better than Pepsis or sodas or sugar drinks. You know, it's a healthy drink. But now they're discovering that even bottled water is causing breast cancer because of the bottles they're using, the pollutants that are in the water when it gets hot or when it gets cold. If you freeze your water, it's releasing chemicals within that water that will harm you. So why do we allow that to continue? Because even when they wash the bottles, the rest of the water they leave behind are full of the contaminants of preparing the bottles and washing them to sell back to us. So it's a maddening kind of a situation, and it's like when the masses of the people wake up, and that's what we want, is the people to wake up and see what's going on and stop supporting that corporate world's view, because soon there won't be a world. You know, I was talking earlier saying, how many of you saw that movie 2012? 2012, the end of the world, right? Mayan calendar ends, Chinese calendar ends, prophets, and everybody say it's going to end, and everybody's going to be going to look for the vortex, you know, going to beam up, get out of here. I watched that movie, and I thought it was kind of entertaining in that, on the one hand, the governments of all the countries, they all knew, right? They all knew that the plates were sliding and that, you know, total destruction was just around the corner. And all these corporate rich people had bought into these and supported the building of their escape route, right? Because they're going to be the ones who live on into the future. Yet the masses of the people in the cities all over the world, it's like, yeah, let's go down to the club. We got to dance our last night. We don't even know. Nobody's told us. This is our last dance.